There we go. Okay, so what I want to talk about is I want to talk about a program, use that as an example and go through it and look at it in a little bit more detail about how to use elif statements and if-else statements and that kind of stuff, and error checking. Well, error checking, yes, kind of, sort of. But the first thing that we have to think about, and this has to do with problem solving, and that is, if I'm going to have the user enter a month, so they're going to enter the month, and then tell them how many days are in that month. I need to know a couple of things off the bat. So what is it that we need to know in order to do this as people, as a human working on this program? What is it that we need to know? I'm going to get a piece of paper and I'm going to write on it. So you tell me, what do we need to know? I already know what we need to know. I have a pen. I'm ready.
Probably how many days each month has.
Okay. So without the word probably, how many days is in a particular month, right? So we need to know the days in the month entered, correct? Well, I guess we need to know them all. The days in the month. So how many days are in months? I know this all sounds very simple, right? But how many days are in months?
Like an average, or?
No, how many days are in a month? There's 7 days in a week, yes.
Depends.
Patricia, yeah, of course it depends, yeah. It's an open question. So depending on the month, it's 30 or, and I'm looking at the chat room, or 31. And now I need you guys to think, is that correct? And actually not just think, but say something. Summer is correct. And so are some other of you. Eduardo, you jumped to the next question. Awesome. So we do have one month that has 28 days, right? Which month is that? February. So February has 28 days. But February is a pain in the ass. Excuse my French, right? Because Eduardo said that we have leap years. How many days did it have on a leap year? 29. So what does that mean? It means that 11 of the 12 months are easy, but February is a pain in the butt, okay? Because February is 28. How often do we have a leap year? Every 4 years, thank you. So every 4 years, we have a leap year. So that means 3 out of 4 years, February has 28 days, and then 1 out of every 4 years, it has 29. So, how can we figure out whether a month is a leap year? Now, the others are easy, right? So if the user enters September, how many days are in September? $30. Right? If they enter October, how many days are in October? 31. If they enter January, it's 31. Right? If they enter March, right? We know these numbers. Those numbers are easy. That's the easy bit of the program. What makes it a huge pain in the butt is February. So I'm going to show you the book, because the book now screen 1 and 2 have changed again. Okay. Every time I run Zoom. So can you see the book? Because every time I run Zoom, my screen 1 and 2 are different screens. Okay, so good. Eduardo at least can see the book. So here it's talking about, well, actually here, this whole section here is all about February. So February is the only month that can have a different number of days, 28 or 29. So we have to figure out whether it's a leap year or not. So in our program, if the user enters 2, because we're going to have the user enter a number for the month, if they enter 2, we then have to ask them, well, what year are you talking about? And when we ask them what year, they're going to type in the year, and then we have to use that year and figure out whether it's a leap year or not. And if it is a leap year, then we tell them it's 29, and if it's not a leap year, we'll output it's 28 days. So does that make sense? That was a question. Does that make sense to everybody? So it makes sense to Summer. So I have one of, how many people are there? How many of you are there? I can't see right now. 28. Oh, good. Oh, now I'm getting more responses. I know it's 3 letters and it's hard to type in. So good. It's making sense to people. Okay. Now, here's the general rule to figure out whether something is a leap year or not. Okay, so generally, if a year is evenly divisible by 4, then it's a leap year. Sometimes I can see the thumbs up and sometimes I can't, because the thumbs up shows up on your little thumbnail image, and I can't see all of them. I can usually see more of them if I'm not sharing a screen. So generally, if you can divide a year by 4 and you don't get a remainder, then it's a leap year. There are a couple of exceptions. If the year is divisible by 4, but also divisible by 100, then it's not a leap year. Unless, I told you this isn't complicated, unless it's also divisible by 400. So 2000 was a leap year, but 1900 was not. And so here is the condition. If the year is, and by the way, okay, so if the year entered mod 4 equals 0. So what does mod 4 return? When I do this math, it's a division, right? When I do year mod 4, I get, what do I get? Ooh, Sevilla answered. Did everybody else see Sevilla's answer? Or Sevilla? How do you pronounce your name, Sevilla?
Sevilla.
Sevilla?
Yeah, Sevilla.
Okay, because I don't want to say it wrong. Did everybody see her answer? Does everybody see her answer? Yes. So if I divide the year, if I do year mod 4, the result is the remainder, the leftover part, right? So if year mod 4 is equal to 0, what does that mean? When does that evaluate as being true? What does it mean? It means what? Yes, the year is a multiple of 4 because there is no remainder, right? So what it means is that 4 goes into the year evenly. Does that make sense? Oh, good. Okay, as long as I'm getting overwhelming yeses, that's awesome. Okay, thank you for playing, by the way. So, if generally, right, if a year is evenly divisible by 4, then it's a leap year. But it also has to not be divisible by 100 evenly, unless it's also divisible by 400. Okay, so here I have the second part. So here I say, well, okay, so if this part works, so if this is equal to 0, then I also have to look at, and I have to look at whether the year is not equally divisible by 100. That's what this year mod 100 equals 0 checks for. Okay, so if the year is equal to, if year mod 4 is equal to 0 and year mod 100 is not equal to 0, okay? Well, no. If year mod 100 is equal to 0, if it's, okay. This is difficult to say out loud. So I'm checking for whether I can divide the year equally by 100. Okay, if 100 goes into the year with no remainder, what I'm checking for is I'm making sure that that's not the case. That's a little bit difficult to understand, but let's take a look at the second part here. Or the year is evenly divided by 400. So if the year is divisible by 4, but it is also divisible by 100, then it is not a leap year. So it's a leap year if this is true, but not if this is true. Does that make sense? Okay, so again, if this is true and this is not true, it's a leap year. Okay, good. I'm glad you're following me, because this is a little bit difficult. So if you don't follow it, I'll spend more time on it. So it wouldn't be a leap year if both of those things were true, but I have a not in here. Okay. Now, if it's also divisible by 400, then it is a leap year. So here I have an or statement, right? I'm using one of my Boolean operators. So if the year is divisible equally by 100, or the year is equally divisible by 400. If either one of those is not true, then it is a leap year. So if this is true and this is true, then it's a leap year. Okay? So let's take a look at okay, so there we are. So let's take a look at the program. So, because that's the difficult part. So that's going to figure out whether it's a leap year or not. And that's what makes this problem or program a bit of a pain in the butt because of February. Oh, damn it, I did it wrong. Number of days in the month. Edit with idle. Okay, so here we are. And before we go through this, let's run it and see what happens. So I just clicked run and I'll move this onto this screen. So here is how the program works. It says this program will display the number of days in a given month. So there's my welcome. And it says enter the month, and then it gives me an example of how to enter the month, 1 through 12. So I'm going to enter 10. That's October. October should have 31 days. So we press enter, and then I have my output. There are 31 days in the month, and I don't like my output because I like to have a double space. So I need to do this. Print. That's one way of doing it, right? So let's run it again. And I don't know why it keeps popping up on this screen. Oops, let me move it up here. So I'm going to enter 2 because that's the problem month, February. Enter. Because I put in 2, I now have a prompt for what year. And so I will do 2000. And 2000 was a leap year. So it says there are 29 days in the month. Let me run this again, and I'll do a non-leap year. This is how we test for stuff. So a non-leap year, I know that 1900 was not non-leap year. Oops, got to do 2. And actually, this year wasn't a leap year either, I think. But let's just do 1900. And so it says there are 28 days in the month. So you can see that I'm taking care of whether it's a leap year or not for February. And by the way, if I just enter, say, January, then, or August or something like that, then it's going to it won't prompt me, right? So it just says there are 31 days in the month. Oh, this year was a leap year? Okay, so let's see. Let's test it and see if it works. Because of COVID, I have no idea what day of the month it is, what day of the week it is. Oh, come on. I have to try to grab this and move it. There we go. So let's do 2. Yeah, I know. I don't even know what time it is most of the time. 2020. Hey, it's right. It's working. Okay. So let's take a look at the code. So I start off with what this program is about, right? And then I have my program greeting. So there's my welcome. And by the way, do we remember what the \n does? New line. Well, actually, yeah, it skips a line, right? Yeah, it skips a line. Now I'm doing valid.
So that takes for like the print empty parentheses.
It's kind of like this, yeah. It does the same thing as that does. So if I didn't have this /n here and I wanted the double space, I would do print empty parentheses right there on line 5. But the /n is another way to do it. \n, I'm sorry. Okay, so valid input equals true. So what is this? He asked his class. Who should know? What is this line generically? I'm not asking you about input validation. I'm just asking you what it is that this line does. Again, think of it as saying, yes, it assigns a value to the variable. So valid input is a memory spot, a variable. And what I'm doing here is I'm putting the word true into it. Does that make sense? Okay, now why we're doing that is irrelevant for the moment. Okay. Next, I'm going to prompt the user for input. Enter the month, please. And again, a lot of times when we're looking at code, it's much easier to look at the code from right to left. Okay, that's kind of how the code executes, right? It's going to do this first, right? That shows up on the screen. And then the user types in a number and presses enter. That's when this part happens, right? So we're saying get some input. We're going to do we're going to make sure that that input is seen as an integer. Again, I'm not using float data types, so basically I'm converting it into the integer data type, and then I'm putting it into the variable that I created called month. So hopefully that makes sense also. So now I'm actually going to determine the days in the month. And how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to work on February first, because February is the one that's a pain in the butt. And if it is February, then I need to display another message, right? So here I'm using an if statement. So it's a validation. If month is equal to 2, right? So that means that we're working with February. Now, if month is not equal to 2, then I just jump to here, right? But let's just go with if month is equal to 2. So if, like I did with the 2, right? Then I have to prompt the user to input the year. So I need to do another value assignment right here. So again, it's input. It's an integer. Again, we don't have decimals for years, right? They're all whole numbers. And so I'm going to put that into the year because I need to check to see whether the year is equally divisible by 4. And I do that by using a mod statement. So here I say if. So if this is true, right? So if this condition evaluates as being true, and remember that the condition is everything after the if. And this condition is a little bit complicated. Well, it's not a little bit complicated. It is complicated. And so we kind of have to understand it. This is the part that's the hard part here. And if you had to do this from scratch and you just knew that, the conditions that were set, you'd have to figure it out. So if the year is divisible by 4 equally, and it is not divisible by 100 equally, or divisible by 400 equally, then it's a leap year. And so the number of days is 29. If the year is not divisible by 4 equally, it is not a leap year. If it is divisible by 24 equally, and it's not divisible by 100 equally, then it isn't a leap year. Valerie, I have no idea. She said, what if you're born on the 29th of February and it's not a leap year? How do you celebrate your birthday? Well, I guess you only celebrate your birthday every 4 years, and you're kind of like a dog. You have to multiply how many years old you are. No. I assume that you would probably celebrate it on the 29th or the 1st if it's not a leap year, because you're still a year older. You have to celebrate it exactly at midnight. No, I don't know. But I assume people will still celebrate their year every year. Time just pauses. You don't get a year older. So you're only like, 2 years old when you're actually 8. So you have to multiply everything by 4. You're like a dog. No. So where was I? Okay. So if this is not true, then that means it's not a leap year. If it is true, and this is not true, hold on. If this is not true, it is not a leap year. If this is true, and the year is not, or the year is divisible equally by 100, then it isn't a leap year. And if the year is divisible by 400, it isn't a leap year. So I say it can't, this not means if this is true, then it's not a leap year. No, if this is not true, it's a leap year. And if this is not true, it's a leap year. Is that right? See, I'm getting myself screwed up. But anyway, this all has to evaluate as being true, then it's a leap year. Else, it's not a leap year, and February has 28 days. Now, if the month is not 2, okay? So if the month entered is not 2, then thank God it doesn't do any of this crap. It just jumps to this section. And so here I'm saying, else if the month that was entered is in, and here is another function of Python. So the in is actually going to check this set of numbers that I created. So if I enter 3 as the month, right? That's March. So this would be 3. So else if 3 is in this list of numbers. And by the way, you could do strings also. So I could have the user type in the actual month, the name of the month, and then instead of having 1, 3, 5, 8, 7, 8, 10, 12, I could type in the names of the month. So if it's in that and 3 is, then it's going to do a value assignment saying number of days is 31. And by the way, the number of days here, that's what I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to put a value into num days. Okay, so I'm either going to put in 29, 28, 31 or 30, right? Because there's only 4 that I can have. So if the number of the month, so if the month is in this group, and this group is January, March, May, July, August, October, and December, that's what that represents numerically, then the number of days is 31. Now, if this is not true, so if this evaluates the month that they typed in is not in this list, so let's say they typed in 4, then we check this. So we go to the next one. We don't do this. We check the next one. And so here I'm saying, is the number that's held in the month variable in this group of numbers? And by the way, parentheses, then whatever it is, whether it says January, comma, February, comma, March, or 4, comma, 6, comma, 9, 11. So here I have 4, and if that was 4, then I would do this. Now, here I'm checking the user input, because what could the user have done, he asked, when they typed in the number of the month. What could they have done? So it prompted them, enter the number of the month. What could they have input? That would screw up the program. Zero, 1. You could use an easier example. 0. They could have put it, yeah. So they could have put 32 or 61 or 99 or any number that's greater than 12 or less than 1, right? So those are all invalid, or float, I guess, yeah. Although that would have probably caused, no, that'll cause the program, I think, to crash. I don't understand your comment, Peter. It says, why though? Why? What do you mean, why though? Why would they put in a number other than 1 through 12? Is that what you're saying, Peter? Yeah. Okay, so let me explain something to you. Why would a user of a program enter invalid input? So why would they put in a number less than 1 or greater than 12? There's 2 reasons. One, they could press the buttons incorrectly, right? So they could have, on accident, entered the wrong number. So they meant to enter 12 and they pressed the 3 instead, and so now it's 13, right? Or, and we should always assume this, users are stupid. So somebody using a program will screw up the program. Users are stupid. We have to spell stuff out for them, and we have to take into account all kinds of weird things. Maybe even though it says enter the month 1-12, they type in the word 2, right? So there's all kinds of issues that we have. And as programmers, we should always assume that end users are morons. Okay, they're dumb. And they're stupid, and they're going to screw up the program. If it's possible to screw it up, they're going to screw it up. Okay, so, but typically in this case, I'm going to guess they entered it incorrectly because they typed something wrong. So that's why I have this section here for invalid input. So I have my else section. So if my input, if month is not equal to 2, it doesn't do this. And if month is not in this list, And if the month is not in this list, it's going to do this. Right? And what does it mean? It means that it's not valid input. So I'm putting my valid input equal to false. And you know what I should do here, because we're not that advanced? What just happened? Where did it go? It's my touchpad always does weird things. I'm going to say, oops. Okay, so I'm going to say else. So it's going to do this. Okay, right? It's going to print this line, and it's going to say invalid value entered. And then it's going to tell me what the invalid value was, because it's going to print them, it's going to show me the month. And now, what it's also going to do is it's going to set the valid input to be equal to false. And now let's look at this last line here. This is just an if. It's not an if else. Okay? So this is just an if. So that means all I'm doing is I want to see if something, it's actually an if else. Okay? If the variable valid input is equal to true, I'm going to show the user there are blank number of days in the month, right? Else, I'm not going to do anything, right? I'm not going to show the user anything. If the valid input is not true, I'm not going to show the user anything. And that's why I can actually drop the else, because there's no code that I need to write. So there's no else code. And the reason I'm not showing an else is because I'm doing the print here for if they didn't type the right thing. Okay. So let's take a look at the program and let me type in something incorrect. Type in invalid input. Now, the first thing I'm going to check is to see if they type in something like that. And what happened here? The program crashed, right? But why did it crash? Tell me why it crashed. Tell me why. Why did it crash when I typed in the word to?
That's not the format that you wanted it in, right? It says 1 through 12.
Well, yeah, but why did it crash? Why did that input? I know it's invalid input, right? But why did it crash? It is a word. Your name is 19094. 19094. What's your name? He asked. 19094. You just typed something in the chat room. What's your name? Neil. Okay. I was like, is your name actually 19094? Okay, so while I was asking Neo what his name was, some of you gave me the right answer to the original question. The reason it crashed, and by the way, when I moved this, I moved it strategically. It crashed because of this line. I typed in the word to, right? And I tried to convert the word to into an integer. Is that possible? No, it's not. So it will crash. The same thing holds true if I try to convert or try to run this program and enter a decimal data type. You can see the program, right? It crashed. Why? Because of this. And by the way, it's showing me the line here that's causing it to crash. It's line 10 in module, right? And this is it. Does that make sense? By the way, it is always a good idea to turn on your, thank you, Eduardo, for saying yeah. It's always a good idea to turn on your numbers here. And where are they? That's not where they are. They were right there. Options, hide line numbers. So they're right here. So I can hide them. And for some reason, by default, that's turned off. It should be on by default, I think. So you can go show line numbers. And by the way, if you're using a different version, go to help. And one of these things should tell you how to turn them on. It should be somewhere. But it's always a good idea to turn them on, because if you get error messages, it tells you what line your issue is. Okay, and so it's much easier to do this than to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. See, I already screwed it up. I was at 9 here. Okay, so let's run this, and let's run it with an actual integer input, but an invalid one. So 25. Invalid value entered 25. So the program does not crash. It just says that you input something incorrectly. Okay? So that's what this else does. Because it's out of the range, and this doesn't evaluate as being true, this does not evaluate as being true, and this does not evaluate as being true, it does this. Now, it will not do this because I changed the valid input to false. And remember that here I set it to be true. So unless this piece of code runs, this will be true, and this will evaluate as being true, so it will print this. There are blank number of days in the month. Does that make sense? So this program is introducing some new concepts like this in, and a list of, in this case, it's a list of integers, a list of numbers. The book, I think, did cover it earlier. I just haven't covered it. So, having said that, that's Lab for today. If you have questions about anything, as usual, I will stick around and not go away until I've answered them.